All right, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder. This is the show where we hear from musicians and artists about how they do it. It's a confusing time in music at the moment. Don't know how people are staying on the road. Don't know how people keep on making records. But people manage to do it. That's what I want to hear about on this show. Thanks so much for joining. And on today's episode, we hear from Jack from Pest Control. When I heard this band a couple of years ago, I just got excited and my head started being like one of those bobble dogs in the car. It's like punk, metal, hardcore, don't care. It's just rad. It makes me excited. It fuels me, gives me life. I love it. They're just about to start a 6-week US tour, which is mad. I spoke with Jack just as soon as they landed in the Airbnb. He spoke with me about, well, start of the band up until now, so we can learn about Pest Control. We can jam it before, you can put it on pause if you like this interview and jam it in the middle, jam it afterwards. This band's sick, they rip. Really excited I got to speak with Jack. Thanks so much for being here. Year of the Pest is their latest record. It's an EP that came out last year. They've also got an album called Don't Test the Pest that came out a couple of years ago. There's enough about this band to get stoked on. They've also got some amazing merch on their Bandcamp, so go and have a look at that. Thanks for being here. If you're able to subscribe or leave a review, you can do that wherever you're listening, on Apple or Spotify. After the jump, we're hearing from Jack of Pest Control. 101 part-time jobs. I think when I think of Pest Control, I think how fucking proficient in guitar player speak you are at your instruments, and like that's no small thing to become like pretty fucking good at your instrument. That's like thousands of hours. So maybe that's a good place to start. Like, how many hours do you reckon you have done personally?
Well, personally, I mean, I'm probably the least, I'm not saying this as a kind of a dig to myself, I'm probably the least proficient member of this band in terms of kind of musical abilities as a bass player. But I mean, it doesn't mean that I haven't put in thousands of hours at some point and then kind of like regressed from there, if you know what I mean. I was,
Is that like unlearning the things?
It's almost becoming too streamlined, I kind of get to the point now sometimes where all that I play sometimes for bass is just for Pest Control. I've been playing in bands since I was 16. I'm sure like the majority of people on your podcast have probably said, the same, like we've been playing in music since we were kids. And that's true of everyone in this band. We've all been playing. This is my 15th band, for instance. And it's
is it? You've counted?
Yeah.
Damn.
It's the only one, anyone's been remotely interested in, and has never bothered me before. But I think the other the two Joes and Ben, as instrument players, I'm not disregarding Leah as a vocalist, but as kind of proficient instrument players, they've all put thousands of hours in, and Joe Carey especially, is someone I think people were kind of like often astonished by his guitar playing thing, but he never really he played bass for loads of years and never really kind of put himself out there as a guitar player. It was only really when we started this band that he, and then lockdown happening, all those kind of countless hours we had spare, that he really actually kind of put himself back into guitar playing, which is mind-blowing.
I mean, I find the whole thing quite comical. When you look back to being 16, 17, there's loads of things you could be doing. Locking yourself in your bedroom or going to band practice and asking for lifts off anyone, any family member that can give it you, and trying to go to all these shows and trying to play all these gigs. It's just quite funny, I think.
Yeah, isn't it just? I remember having to like sneak out, pretend I was doing like revision or something like that, or like go for a run. But I'd be running to my from a friend's house to like record a demo or something like that, then come back a few hours later stinking of cigs, and and parents being like, "You were not on a run."
Running and smoking the Seagrows.
Yeah.
And at some point it gets to a point, you leave school, you move out, and you either still do it or you end up sort of dropping it. I think a lot about how I think playing music's a lot like skateboarding, in the way that you can get really into it and it defines your friend group, but it's also quite easy to fall out of because there are so many other things that everyone has to prioritize, making money for rent, sort of living that kind of regular life, in the big capitalist world, like no one can avoid that stuff. It's like we all have to pay for life. So how do you think you've been able to do it sort of from those teenage years up until now?
It's been, I think, talk about the big capitalist life. I mean, the big capital is probably the hardest part. I lived in London for 10 years and that, I left Ipswich where I grew up, and I kind of like playing music and working a job was never really a concern there, if you know what I mean. I was a teenager and then moved to London, and it was really hard. I worked in hospitality industry for quite a few years, and there's nothing less conducive to making music than working evenings, working long hours, getting paid poorly. And yet that was like the majority of my musician friends and, my bandmates. We all worked in kitchens and bars and that kind of thing. And that's a really hard, it's a really hard balance of life to strike, because you use all your holidays to take weekends off, to play shows, and then you're left with no actual kind of days off for yourself, really. It was gnarly, and I think I was playing music in London the whole time in a variety of different bands, that kind of thing, but it was just, I don't think it was really working, and I didn't have any expectations of it working. It's always like most people, like kind of playing music is just something you do because you like doing it, but then I moved to Leeds at the beginning of the second lockdown, and initially with the idea of a job didn't really kind of actually come through, so I kind of ended up a bit scrabbling, and I started working at I'll say exactly where you work here. I don't, it's fuck it. Super. I work at a place called Suma. It's the Whole Food Cooperative. I don't know if you've ever heard of us.
I don't think so.
Fancy chickpeas, all that kind of stuff. Okay. But it's an equal pay workers co-op.
Okay,
so
nice.
It's a fairly kind of ethical place, kind of warehouse job, but but
for a good reason.
Exactly. And they really look after me, like as well as like a kind of generous holiday. I get 3 months unpaid leave per year, so that's the kind of almost like the goal.
How much?
3 months unpaid leave per year if I choose to use it. I
mean, it's unpaid, but 3 months is a good time. 3
months is a great time. So that's kind of almost like a golden ticket for a musician, well, especially for people like us who are kind of exploring touring, essentially, kind of like having our kind of first forays into, like we're just about to start a 6-week US tour, which is incompatible with the idea of kind of like, for a lot of people that's quit your job or take the tour.
Yeah. So that's sort of, you said it then. I mean, that is the golden ticket, right? I feel like playing in bands, and I mentioned skateboarding earlier, but I also think of comedians and writers. I think there's so many people where to do that thing that you want to do, as you said, or like you need to do, something inside of you is like, no, I can't not do this thing. You have to almost find this kind of crack between the pavements to just kind of like hide in.
Absolutely. And often that's like the detriment to yourself, isn't it? Or to your ones around you. Yeah.
Mental health. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been having this conversation 10, 15 years ago, probably definitely not. But, it's worth saying about the detriment that it has to your mental health, because, you can't help but, I mean, what's the first thing you do when you meet a friend of a friend? You kind of do the small talk, and then it's like, so what do you do? And it's like, the jobs that we work do massively become part of our identity, and you have to be really good at separating yourself from that. So the mental health aspect of it, or like the way you look at yourself, being like, well, yeah, I do that, and I work in service, and I work at this silver service job that my boss hates me and I don't like it and it all sucks. But actually I've got this thing that I really care about. And, you know, some people buy the records and pay to the gigs, you know, so it's a special thing for them. That's like, there's so much tension in that, you know, that you can get lost in the fug of all that.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, you know, that thing that you love, that takes up the time that realistically sometimes you should be spending on yourself, you know, on kind of your home life, your family life, your interpersonal relationships. And, you know, if you've got like you're lucky enough to have family and friends and partners who are supportive of that, then, you know, that's fantastic. But sometimes the need to put your kind of love of music first actually it can be just as kind of taxing as the work kind of aspect of it.
It's a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying this all with a smile on my face and talk about, like, you know, the kind of the stresses and the strains, and yet I still wouldn't have it any different. You know, if kind of it still feels like a net positive. But if you didn't have it, it would be a hell of a lot worse, I reckon.
This is the thing, and I talking about this side of being an artist, like I really want to get the message of this show to be like, you can still be like, that's bad, that's not good, this isn't good for me, but also like it doesn't negate all the other good stuff. You know, you have everyone's trying to work things out and like define what you're trying to do as you go along, and I think at some point it's like helpful to talk about, oh yeah, I don't like this bit so much, so how do I make sense of that, how do I improve it?
Absolutely. And I think it's something that is, I mean, depends what you're doing as a band as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're having to like work out, navigate, like, how do we interact with each other as a band? We've spent like now hundreds of days, like, each year with each other, and, you know, kind of we haven't found it puts too much of a strain on our friendship, but like that's like a consideration as well.
Yeah, keep an eye on it.
Yeah, strange, isn't it?
What have been it, because Pest Control has been in like Kerrang, you've been in these kind of magazines, you know, I think there's probably loads of different layers to music. There's that world, there's like the publisher world where there's like PRs and managers and like Download, let's say, that's all in that world. You've got the world of sort of Boom and DIY venues and people who maybe aren't even online at all. You've got all this kind of middle ground of like being on socials and, you know, like communicating with people who are into your band. How do you kind of work all that stuff out? Did you have an idea about how you wanted to do it? Did you want to be like a hardcore metal band that's for everyone? Do you still want to like keep within the confines of the idea that you have? Like, how do you think about all that stuff?
I think, you know, even the fact that how long kind of like how many things you just listed there is like kind of like factors or kind of, you know, things you have to take into consideration. It's really tricky sometimes, but I mean, we come from, as you say, kind of like a DIY background, and there's always this kind of tightrope you walk in sometimes when like you see a little bit of success that you know, there's a phrase going around like for the last couple of years in hardcore called procore, which is kind of like a total rejection essentially of like you know, doing well. And I think, you know,
brocore or procore,
and it's kind of like a term to use, like, you to find kind of like what people see as kind of like industry bands kind of coming along, you know, often like US bands come to the UK and kind of you never heard of them, and then suddenly there's kind of they're at the top of a bill, and like we you know, we've been like nervous in the past, being like, oh shit, someone's gonna call us procore sometime soon, and like people know that we put in like the hard yards, you know, and to kind of still kind of like we don't feel like a pro band, because, you know, we're doing it all off our own back and that kind of stuff. Like we obviously have like agents involved and that kind of thing involved, but, you know, good people. But we feel this kind of tension often, like sometimes between like the success that we're getting and the kind of it's not even like where we're from, it's who we still are. You know what I mean? So we're kind of, I think in those kind of situations, like we just, and, you know, talking about like kind of, you know, people enjoying our music and stuff, we just kind of rely back on each other, and the music that we want to make is music we hear in our heads. and the decisions we make are the ones that we just think are best for us. Really, we say no to a lot of stuff that you know, for either kind
Really?
of for reasons like either because it's too much for us to take on, or it just doesn't fit us at all. And
Yeah.
I think that's how we.
It's really nuanced, right?
Yeah, it really is. Especially as well, like being between the punk, the hardcore, and the metal worlds. Like those are the three distinct groups of people a lot of the time. A lot of people go to all three. I'm sure you've gone to all sorts of shows. I've been to all sorts of
Yeah.
shows. I don't see much of a difference, but a lot of people, like we're about to go on this obituary tour with a whole bunch of hardcore bands, but we've done a obituary tour before with just us and them, and that's to primarily metal crowd and things like that, and they all see you differently.
Yeah, it's madness, isn't it? I mean, I think it's no different from someone being like a Chav or a Grebo, the way that some people talk about it. I mean, you're spot on. Like, I don't see any difference. Like, I'm like, oh, these are people making music, like you said, and I really like that phrase. You make music that you hear in your head.
Mm.
Like, that's what everyone just does, isn't it? I feel like we've got a lot more in common than we do have in difference.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are obviously, there are differences between these groups. Like, I've definitely identified as, that feels like quite a strong word to say. I've been part
Yeah.
of all three of those scenes. I grew up in kind of like in Ipswich, where there was a bit like spiky punk, ska punk kind of things growing up. And I was like, that's
Hell
me.
yeah.
That's definitely me.
You're a Filaments fan.
Exactly. I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but then,
I am. I'm still a Filaments fan.
I was also like a teenage metalhead. And I would probably,
Yeah.
I've been moved to London. I know you had Matt on a couple of episodes. I remember going to like early Pigs shows, like going to the kind of windmill stuff around there, and then like
Sick.
it's all the grindcore scene that was happening at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I think if you've seen 1,000 shows, that's when you see it starts to break down, kind of those kind of boundaries between different scenes, and then maybe if you're earlier in your journey, you feel very strongly as part of like one of those scenes potentially.
Do you feel like you're doing anything different now to what you were doing like 10 year ago, 15 year ago?
Do you know what? I don't think I do really. I think it's always been the same way. Like back then I was probably pouring the same amount of effort into putting on shows and going to shows and like honing my craft. Just I say craft.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, but say it that. I mean, that's the one thing that musicians all seem to have, at least musicians that I speak to. There's this self-deprecating thing, which is like, it is like fun and probably you're probably more fun to hang out with if you're self-deprecating than if you have an ego. But, still cool at your craft. Call yourself an artist. What else are you going to call yourself?
Well, you've been very kind, so I'll let me say craft.
Yeah.
Working on my crafts, and that just like plugging away at home, annoying my neighbours and that kind of thing. And I think over time that's been exactly the same amount of energy, exactly the same amount of like love and dedication for music. Maybe it's just changed because now I've got different ways of expressing that. And I say expressing that is financially burdening myself and hamstringing myself by getting a van and like driving bands and driving us around and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So
You've done that. You've bought a van.
yeah, I bought a van. I was, one of the best ways to kind of contribute, to helping us. And we got to a point a couple of years ago, we were like, hang on a minute, we spent thousands on van hire, driver hire.
Yeah.
My car's just died, so I'd only just passed my driving test like 6 months before that as well. So I was like, well, I could just really overwhelm myself and get a van.
Yeah.
And
It's an investment.
it was. I mean, it's an investment that I've yet to see dividends from, but like in terms of practicality, it really helps out.
Yeah. On the finance side of it, I mean, you're doing this 6-week US tour. I mean, the US is expensive, even when you're not eating out, even when you're not doing nice things, it's expensive. Have you worked out how much you expect to come home with, or like how much you expect to lose? Like, do you work that stuff out? And I am aware that this is quite like a dry, boring question, but it's like, we're adults, like we fucking need money to live.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about it yesterday, like we were staying in this, kind of Airbnb thing, and we were posting pictures of ourselves in a pool, and it was it was like we were saying, like, oh, it's gonna be hard to just, beat the allegations that we're like a money band now. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
best case is like we break even. Like, amazing best case is we take a couple
Okay.
of £100 back each. Doing it like, a lot of bands come to the US at a certain level where they can get through border security without doing all the visa stuff. And like maybe let's say a couple of years ago, we might have tried that. And I wouldn't, I'm not like endorsing either way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But doing it the proper way, getting yourself like I think it's a P1 artist visa, costs thousands of pounds. So, it's like a huge barrier to entry, and it takes like months and months of kind of preparation and interviews and that kind of stuff.
And some people still don't get it right. You hear about artists being like, we put all this work and money into it and we got rejected.
Yeah, I was, someone who's a good friend of mine been teaching me drums. So the first time that their band went for it, they just, did everything right, filled it all right, and then just got a rejection, no answer. And then you get the people who get to the border and get a rejection, even though they've got it all filled correctly. And so,
wow. So what was that feeling like coming over, a couple of days ago? How were you all feeling?
Deliriously tired from a 10-hour flight. It was a bit nerve-wracking. We're not really looking to kind of, we're not expecting to make really anything off this tour.
What's the best thing that people can do? Is merch the best way that people can support you?
Yeah, I think absolutely. That's the lifeblood really of like a touring band. It's not that we're not expecting to make not that much of merch. We're expecting to make quite a lot of merch, but it's just the initial costs, that kind of like you try and make.
You have to pay for the shirts and the printing, so you can pick them up now. So that's like thousands of dollars that you're putting into that before seeing any return.
Yeah.
And then you're watching it drip back as every t-shirt literally is sold.
Exactly. And, we're waiting for payment for previous tours from various kind of like parties and, merch companies, that kind of thing. It's really intricate. Like, we can't exactly take all the merch with us. We've got to get like merch drops kind of like along the way. And then 6 weeks, one of us like absolutely knackers herself out, like breaks the bone or something like that, then suddenly it doesn't matter like what your intentions are, like how good the shows are. If you've got to pull it off, then it's done.
It's like some messed up video game, isn't it?
Yeah, almost like, how like sometimes people play those video games where it's like it's almost like a replication of like a job. It's like, why are you doing this? Why are you making burgers like on the screen? It's like adding that element to like kind of something you love, music.
It's great. I love the albums. Well, love the records, love the album. Have you got, what's coming up? I mean, I guess you're not allowed to say something if it's not been announced yet, but have you been recording? Have you been writing?
No, not as yet. I mean, we're always kind of like loosely writing, if you know what I mean, but we've yet to kind of say, we're going to go to the studio at this point. I think first half of this year has been absolutely full on, as all kind of all halves of our years have been for the last couple of years. And in a way, we've had kind of America blindness where, I mean, I don't know if it's true for everyone else, but until we get over this tour, I can't even picture what the second half of my year is going to look like, because I can only really see until one event's over. So we've got a few festivals this summer, and then presumably there's a big gap for us to kind of be creative again.
Yeah, and I love the artworks. Who does the artworks? I mean, I'm sure it says in your Bandcamp. I'm being lazy.
No, it's fine.
Who does them?
So it's been a couple of different people. First two demos were Ben's dad, so our drummer's dad. He's
No way.
Yeah, he's a comic book artist. I think that's the right terminology. But so he did on those ones for us, and it was the next couple.
So sick.
It was by an artist in Finland called Max, and he did some artwork for The Scene. And The Scene are an amazing thrash band. They absolutely just kind of wipe the floor with us, I think. Check them out if you haven't heard them. So I'm not saying we copied them, but we saw who they were using. We were like, yeah, absolutely. And the most recent one, I can't remember his name, I'm really sorry. He's a US artist, and he's done quite a few kind of like more recent US hardcore releases. But we're always going for like a kind of comic book design. I don't think we're going to go for like an artsy kind of like more interpretive artwork next time. I'm fairly sure I can guarantee that.
Metal and hardcore, it's a bit like jazz, right? If you make a mistake, you're like, okay, how do I get back on track here?
I am someone who makes countless mistakes every single show, and I know there's this old kind of like, you always hear it, like musicians who come off stage and they're like, "Oh, that was awful," and everyone's like, "What are you on about? Like, that was great. You're the only one who can hear your mistakes." I've got to the point now where I'm like, "I was awful. I don't care." Like. No one else cares, so I certainly don't care. It's a very rare show where like I actually feel like I've played badly and I'm actually bothered by it. Now I got to the point where I'm just like, I'm not the best, I'm not the tightest. I did have fun. I think I looked all right. So as long as everyone else is happy, I'm absolutely happy as well.
There is something about live music is that, because you're watching it and like when it's so loud, your senses are so overwhelmed when you're in the crowd that if there is like a bit that's different to the record or just plain wrong, I can't say I really care or even notice a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it's only a thing that the band members really kind of like beat themselves up about. Like as a band, we often kind of do have ones where like, yeesh, that was not so good. Maybe we should get back in the practice room that we rent and only use once a month.
You practice once a month?
If that.
Well, you play a lot of shows.
We play a lot of shows. Yeah, we really should practice some more. But we do play a hell of a lot of shows. That kind of sometimes negates the need. We think until we have shows like that when you go, no, we need to get back in.
Great. Yeah, lovely to meat you, man. And I'm sure I'll see you when you're back in the UK. What are you looking forward to? Is there any food or like place that you're really, probably every place that you're going to, but is there anywhere that stands out that you're buzzing for?
Well, I've been a vegetarian since I was 16, and vegan for like quite a few of those years. I've just, a lot of the time when I'm like somewhere far away, I'm just gonna have to pop that on pause. I've never tried a lot of the dishes in America, and I don't want to. What if I never come back here? The way it's kind of going, what if I don't want to come back here? Kind of like,
for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to eating my way around America. Like we're in Texas at the moment, so we had like Tex-Mex breakfast yesterday, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think probably be hitting up a barbecue spot later today, which I can't even conceive of. I still think of America as like TV land. So the idea of like we're gonna, I don't know, rock up to a place with like 100 pickup trucks that's outside it, and then whatever else is going on there, blows my mind. And the landscape of this place as well, like I'm really looking forward to that, going up the west coast and then through the middle, like come to canyons and just the Appalachian area and stuff like that. That's what I'm really looking forward to. But it's good because we've got over 300 hours in the van, so I don't like look out the side of the van. I'm screwed.
It's a long way from Ipswich or Leeds or St Albans, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one hell of a long way.
So there was Jack, bassist of Pest Control, here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Go catch him on tour if you can. Go follow him on Instagram. This band is excellent. Thank you for being here. On Thursday, we've got an episode with Bria Salmina, who was in Orville Peck's band and is now just about to release an amazing solo debut record. So go and have a listen to that. Bria, B-R-I-A, Salmina, S-A-L-M-E-N-A. And be back here on Thursday. Coming up this month, other than that, we've got Sextile, Henry Normal and Brian Bilston, John Niven, the author, Jeffrey Lewis, Patrick Wolf. So really varied. I'm stoked to bring so many different kind of personalities to the show. I hope you enjoy it as well. And see you again on Thursday. Cheers.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.